let us begin by trying to understand what is this Prameya, what are all the legitimate objects of inquiry, or to be more accurate, what are all the legitimate types of objects about which we can get knowledge. Please note the difference. There is a difference between saying what are all the objects we can know and what are all the types of objects we can know, right. So, this light, mirror, curtain, all of these things are objects, whereas all of them can be grouped into a one type called physical substances, let us say, or natural substances. So, when the Vaiśeṣika philosopher is asking the question, what are all the types of knowledge that we can, or what are all the types of objects we can inquire into, they are asking about the category and not the individual tokens, right. And the other thing to remember is that when they are talking about the various objects or types of objects that we can know about, they are including both physical as well as non-physical entities in their reality, or what they constitute as the world outside, or the world within also is considered and the world outside also is considered. So, reality is composed both of physical as well as non-physical entities. So, they developed the concept of the padarthas, or which literally means pada artha, which literally means the meanings of words. So, what are all the various types of things that we can speak about or know. As I had told, this was attributed to the sage Kanada, and they developed a framework to analyze reality into various categories or padarthas. Now, there is a problem in, if you want to know what are the various objects of inquiry, if you start your question like that, what are the various objects of inquiry, there are infinite objects in the world. So, for each and every object you would have to give an account of knowledge. How do I get a knowledge of this lamp? How do I get knowledge of this curtain? How do I get knowledge of this table? How do I get knowledge of light? How do I get knowledge of emotions? How do I get knowledge of soul? Like that, for each and everything you will have to have a different account, which would be impossible. So, if we can somehow classify these objects so that they fall into certain categories, then I have to just give an account of each category. How do I get knowledge about this category of entities? So, they tried to describe or classify reality into these different buckets or categories, and they followed two criteria. For any object to be legitimately called an object of inquiry, it should be nameable as well as knowable. So, please note the difference. I am not saying they should be named or known. If they are already known, there is no need for us to further inquire about them. Nameable, it should be nameable as well as knowable. It makes little sense to set out what are all the various objects of knowledge when they are unknowable. If something you designate as unknowable, then it is futile to start off with how we can know it. So, it should be knowable, and obviously when you know it, they assumed that it should be expressible in language, therefore it has to be nameable also. There are certain other traditions which hold that there are certain things which are knowable but they are not nameable. For example, some traditions believe that Atma is knowable but it is not nameable. We can't talk legitimately about Atman, or the state of moksha, etc. are not describable in language. Some traditions believe that, but the Vaiśeṣika tradition and the Nyaya tradition did not believe that. They believed that whatever is knowable should be nameable. We should be able to talk about it in language, otherwise what is the point of knowing it? So, the two criteria which they used to define some or mark something as a part of their reality was that it should be nameable as well as it should be knowable. And they followed a particular methodology in setting out their knowledge. So, in describing whatever they found, they followed a particular method. What was that? Firstly, they enumerated all those entities which are knowable and nameable. So, what are all the categories of Prameyas? So, this step was called Uddesha. So, what are all the various things? Dravya, Guna, Karma, Samanya. So, these are all the various categories about which we can have knowledge. These are the various types of entities about which we can have knowledge. So, this step of enumeration was called Uddesha. Then they gave the definition of each type. They defined the type, not individual. They did not define definition of curtain is so and so, definition of table is so and so, like that they did not define. All of them taken together they called as dravya. So, they just have to give the definition of dravya, that is all, or a substance. So, what is a substance? They gave definitions. So, this step was called lakshana. So, to define, to give a set of necessary and sufficient conditions, so that if I get those characteristics, I can label that entity as a dravya. Okay, so this second step was called Lakshana. Now after this there were some intricacies. Somebody would raise some objection whether this definition is good, does it leave out certain things, does it have too many things taken into it, etc. These kinds of doubt would be asked. So the examination of that definition to remove any ambiguity was called Pariksha. So these are the three steps that the Vaisheshika used to set out their knowledge. So first enumerate all the categories, define each of them, and then examine each of the definitions to remove any ambiguity. By doing this, they came up with a total of 6 padarthas. The seventh one was implicit, but later on it was part of their framework, the Nyaya Vaisheshika framework. So the 7 categories that they came up with was Dravya, Guna, Karma, Samanya, Samavaya, Vishesha, and the last one was Abhava or absence. So each of these has some correspondence in the world outside. There is each of these are the types of entities about which you can know something. So Dravya is a substance, Guna is attribute, Karma is action or motion, Samanya is universality or the common features. So for example, this is also a table, this is also a table, and if you have some table on which you are mostly keeping this laptop and seeing or whatever, that is also called a table. How is it that even if different tables of different types, we are all able to mark it all as a table? It is because it contains some universal property called tableness or tablehood, that is called the Samanya. Fifth one was Vishesha. The Vishesha is particularity or speciality. How is it that I am able to distinguish entity A from entity B? So though both are let us say tables, I am able to distinguish this table from this table. It is because the very atoms that make up the table are different from the atoms that make up this table. So each and every atom is distinguished from each other. So this kind of distinguishing feature was called Vishesha. And all of these are held together by an ontological glue called Samavaya or inherence. So if for example this remote is not inherent in my hand, okay, it is not called the relation between the remote and my hand is not called inherence, because I can easily separate the two, okay, it is just a simple contact, whereas the relation of black with this particular remote is called a inherence relation. See, a quality or a guna inheres in a dravya. Similarly, if I throw this action is inseparable from this particular entity. At the time when it was moving, it was inseparable from the substance. So the action also inheres in the substance. Similarly, the universality called remote, being a remote, is inseparable from this. So any of these inseparable relation was called a Samavaya. So these are the Samavaya acted as the glue which held all these entities together. So let us take a simple example to see how in every sentence the padarthas or the categories of Vaisheshika make their appearance. I have taken a sentence here, no brown cow walks here. Okay. So in this sentence, the first thing that you can notice maybe is that it is talking about some cow. So entities like cow are called Dravya, it is a substance, right. So you can, the first category called Dravya has made an appearance over here. What sort of cow are we talking about? We are talking about a brown cow. Here brown is a attribute, it is a guna. The gunas can be other like form, smell, etc. These are also part of the category called guna. In this case I have taken color. So the second category has also made its appearance. Now here, that is another word which denotes some spatial location, it denotes. Space was also considered one of the dravyas. Dik is considered one of the dravyas. Now the other one that is prominent over here is walks. We are talking about some activity called or karma called walking. So the other category has also made an appearance over here. So we have dravya, we have guna, we have another dravya which is space, and then we have karma. Now what about the samanya? Now how do you know that this is a cow, right? Because it has some universality called cowness in it. How do you know that this is brown color? Because you have seen brown before and this has something called brownness in it. So the samanya or the universal of cowhood or cowness inheres in that particular substance called cow. So you have the another category called samanya also appearing over there. But how do you know that it is this cow only and you are not talking about some other cow? there is some peculiarity or particularity about this particular cow, down to the atom that go into making that cow. Each of the atoms is distinct from the other atom. So you have the particularity which is also making an appearance in this particular case, and all of these qualities are held together within the cow with the samavaya relation or the inherence relationship. So the brown color inheres in the cow, walking inheres in the cow. So we have that category also. Now notice that one word is left out, which is called no. No brown cow walks over here. So they tried to match each and every word to some or the other padartha. So here words like no, not, etc., they mapped on to a padartha called abhava or absence. Note that we are not talking about non-existence over here, we are talking about absence. So absence also they considered as a category. So by taking a simple example, we have seen how all the categories of the vaiśeṣika have made an appearance. Please, just to recap, that what we are talking about is the types of things that you can know about, not the individual tokens.